Rich millionaire pretends to sleep to test the shy maid. Then he freezes when seeing what she does. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The morning sun had barely risen above the tall oak trees surrounding the Carter estate. Dew clung to the grass like tiny diamonds, and the faint hum of the gardener's tools drifted through the quiet air. Inside the marble halls of the mansion, everything looked perfect: polished floors, crystal chandeliers, fresh roses on every table. But in the master bedroom, a quiet test was about to begin. Evan Carter lay still on the enormous bed, his eyes closed, his breathing steady. To anyone passing by, he looked asleep. But behind his calm expression, his mind was awake, sharp, and curious. For weeks, he had been convinced that his new maid, the timid young woman named Mia, was too good to be true. She never complained, never asked for favors, and treated everyone with the same gentle respect. Evan, a man who had built his empire by doubting every surface smile, wanted proof. He had fired 3 housekeepers in the last year for stealing, lying, or gossiping. Trust, to him, was a currency rarer than gold. Today, he wanted to see who Mia really was when no one was watching. The door opened softly. The quiet shuffle of shoes brushed against the carpet. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," Mia whispered, though she thought he was asleep. Her voice trembled slightly, the way someone's voice does when they are afraid of breaking the silence. She set down a silver tray with a bowl of fruit, a folded newspaper, and a cup of coffee. The aroma filled the air: dark roast, no sugar, just as he liked it. Mia hesitated before pulling back the heavy curtains, letting sunlight spill across the room. The light touched Evan's face, and she froze for a second, almost apologetic. "Sorry, sir," she murmured. "I did not mean to wake you." He did not move, not even a flicker. She began to tidy up the bedside table, carefully aligning each item. When she reached for the glass of water, she noticed a wrinkle on the pillow under his head. Without thinking, she leaned close and smoothed the fabric with her palm. Her hand lingered for a brief moment, as if she wanted to make sure he was comfortable. Then she noticed a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. The morning was warm, the air heavy. She looked around, found a small handkerchief folded neatly beside the tray, and dipped it into cool water. Gently, she wiped his forehead. Her touch was light, almost reverent. "You work too hard," she whispered under her breath, unaware that he could hear every word. "Even when you are resting, you look like you are fighting something." Evan's chest tightened. He had heard many voices in his life, voices that flattered, demanded, or deceived, but never one that sounded so genuine. When Mia finished, she folded the handkerchief again, set it beside the bed, and sighed softly. Her gaze wandered to the grand painting on the wall, an oil portrait of a smiling woman in pearls. "Your mother must have been kind," she said quietly. "You have her eyes." Evan's breath caught. That painting was private, a memory he never discussed. No one in his staff even dared to mention it. Mia tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, then adjusted the sheets, making sure every corner was perfect. Before leaving, she paused at the door, looked back once more, and whispered, "I hope you rest well today, Mr. Carter." When the door closed, Evan slowly opened his eyes. The sunlight shimmered across the handkerchief she had used his mother's initials embroidered in blue thread, the one he kept on the table as a keepsake. She could have ignored it, yet she chose kindness. For the first time in a long while, the cold-hearted millionaire felt something unfamiliar: warmth. And he could not help but wonder what else would she do if she believed no one was watching. The next morning, the air was heavy with the smell of rain. Clouds hung low over the Carter estate, and the wind brushed softly through the rose garden outside the kitchen windows. Inside, Mia stood at the long counter, folding freshly laundered napkins with quiet precision. Her fingers trembled slightly from exhaustion. She had been awake since 5 o'clock, finishing chores before the staff inspection. When the other maids laughed and chatted over breakfast, Mia stayed silent. She had only been here for 2 weeks, and though the mansion shimmered with beauty, she felt like a ghost wandering through someone else's dream. Every polished floor and glimmering chandelier reminded her of what she did not have: a home, a family, and time. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her uniform. The cracked screen lit up with a single message from the hospital. Payment overdue. Treatment will be paused in 48 hours. Her stomach turned. The words burned like a brand. She exhaled slowly and whispered to herself, "Just 3 more paychecks, and Mom will be fine." 3 more. Mia's mother had been admitted to St. Andrew's Hospital 2 months earlier. Pneumonia had turned into complications, and the bills kept climbing. Her savings disappeared faster than she could earn. Before this job, she had cleaned motel rooms, washed dishes, even scrubbed floors at a night diner. But none of those paid enough. When she saw the Carter Estate's notice for a live-in maid with excellent salary and housing provided, she took the bus from her small town with nothing but 2 dresses and a heart full of hope. Her supervisor, Mrs. Daniels, entered the kitchen, heels clicking on the tile. "Mia, Mr. Carter prefers breakfast served by 8 o'clock sharp. Do not be late again. Vua." "Yes, ma'am," Mia replied quickly, lowering her head. Mrs. Daniels sighed. "You are quiet, but at least you are not lazy. Just remember, this is not a charity. If you make mistakes, you will be gone before lunch." Mia nodded, biting the inside of her cheek. The sound of those words followed her through every corridor she cleaned. Later that afternoon, she stood on the grand staircase, dusting the mahogany railings that spiraled toward the skylight. Her reflection stretched across the polished surface, a simple girl in a faded uniform, hair pulled back in a plain braid, face pale from lack of sleep. She sometimes wondered if anyone even saw her. When she reached the upper hallway, she paused at the open doorway of Mr. Carter's study. The curtains were drawn halfway, casting soft stripes of light across the bookshelves. The scent of cedar and coffee filled the air. His voice drifted faintly from inside, firm yet tired, speaking on the phone. "I told them no. I am not interested in fake charity events. If people want to do good, they should do it quietly." Mia stepped back before he noticed her, heart thudding. The tone of his voice carried weight, authority, but also a kind of weariness. She recognized the exhaustion of someone fighting a battle no one could see. She continued down the hall, humming under her breath to calm herself. Each room she cleaned felt like a different world. Framed art, silk drapes, imported vases. Yet beneath all that luxury, she sensed loneliness. Maybe that was why she stayed, not just for the money, but because, somehow, she felt needed here, even if no one said it aloud. That evening, when the mansion grew quiet, she sat in the small attic room the staff called the quarters. The rain began again, tapping softly against the window pane. She opened her notebook, the one she used to keep track of her mother's medication schedule, and beside the notes, she had written a simple prayer: "Please let tomorrow be kind." She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the rain. In another part of the house, Evan Carter sat at his desk, staring at the same gray sky through his window. He could not shake the image of the young maid's gentle hands, the way she had spoken to him as if he were human, not a billionaire to be feared or flattered. In the quiet rhythm of the rain, 2 worlds, one rich, one struggling, breathed under the same roof, unaware that their fates were already beginning to intertwine. That night, the storm rolled through the valley like a restless heartbeat. The mansion lights flickered once, then steadied. Inside, the silence felt heavy, broken only by the ticking of the tall grandfather clock in the hallway. Evan sat by the fireplace in the study, his laptop open but untouched. He stared at the flames, their orange light reflecting in his eyes. His mind should have been on the quarterly report waiting in his inbox, yet all he could think about was the girl with the quiet voice who had wiped his forehead that morning. He had built his life on control. Every number, every partnership, every risk measured, predictable, and clean. But nothing about Mia felt predictable. There was something disarming about her simplicity, the way she did small things with such care that it felt sacred. He looked down at the handkerchief resting beside him on the desk. The initials E.C. were embroidered in blue thread. It was his mother's, the one he had kept for 20 years. He still remembered the day she gave it to him before his first board meeting. "Remember, Evan," she had said, "money can buy obedience, not sincerity. The people who treat you with kindness when they do not have to, those are the people who matter." And that morning, Mia had done exactly that. Outside, the The rain grew harder. Evan rose and walked toward the window. Down in the courtyard, a lone figure hurried across the garden with an umbrella that barely held against the wind. The faint yellow of the staff uniform caught his eye. Mia. He frowned. What was she doing out there at this hour? A few minutes later, he saw her enter through the side door, carrying a soaked paper bag close to her chest. Curiosity tugged at him, quiet but sharp. He followed the sound of her footsteps down the back corridor, careful to stay unseen. In the small pantry near the kitchen, Mia placed the dripping bag on the counter and opened it. Inside were 2 bread rolls and a small jar of soup, steam rising faintly. She wiped rain from her face and whispered, "Still warm. Good." Then she reached under the counter and pulled out a small lunchbox pink, with a child's name written in fading ink, Noah Carter Foundation. Evan froze in the shadows. That was the charity school his mother had funded years ago. Mia packed the food into the box, closed it carefully, and tucked a folded note inside. She whispered softly, "For the boy by the bus stop. He never finishes the soup, but he smiles when I bring it." Oh! Evan's chest tightened. She had walked out in the storm for a child who was not even her own, using food she had probably paid for herself. He stepped back, silent, his thoughts tangled between disbelief and admiration. In his world, generosity always came with cameras, contracts, or tax receipts. But this was something else entirely. When Mia left the pantry, he remained there, staring at the small puddle her umbrella had left on the floor. He looked at the faint smudge of her handwriting on the bag and felt something stir deep within him, a memory of the boy he used to be before the empire, before the walls. The next morning, the air smelled of damp roses and fresh bread. The mansion was alive with movement, but Evan was different. He did not call for the driver or check the market updates. Instead, he walked into the kitchen, startling the staff. Mrs. Daniels nearly dropped her tray. "Good morning," he said simply. "Where is Mia?" The room fell silent. Mia appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, unsure if she was in trouble. "Yes, Mr. Carter?" He gestured toward the handkerchief on the counter. "You used this yesterday, did you not?" Her breath caught. "Yes, sir. I am sorry. I did not realize it was yours. I just wanted to help," he interrupted softly. "I know." For a moment, the usual distance between employer and servant disappeared. He studied her face, the exhaustion, the honesty, the faint trace of fear, and something inside him shifted. "You did nothing wrong," he said quietly. "In fact, you reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago." Mia blinked, confused. "What is that, sir?" "That kindness is not weakness." Her lips parted, but no words came. She nodded instead, lowering her eyes as a faint blush colored her cheeks. Evan turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "Mia," he said, "the next time it rains, you should take the car. No one should have to walk through a storm for someone else." She smiled faintly, unsure if he meant it as an order or a kindness. "Yes, Mr. Carter." He walked away, but the echo of her quiet, "thank you," followed him down the hall. And though he would never admit it aloud, the millionaire who once pretended to sleep could no longer pretend not to feel. The following week arrived with the soft promise of spring. The snow had melted into puddles that mirrored the sky, and the Carter estate buzzed with preparations for the upcoming charity inspection. Every staff member worked in quiet panic, polishing, dusting, and perfecting every inch of the mansion. Mia moved carefully from room to room, her routine smooth and focused. She had learned to stay invisible, quiet enough to blend in, but attentive enough to never make a mistake. Yet lately, she could feel eyes following her. Not the harsh, judging kind she had grown used to, but watchful, curious, as if someone was trying to understand her. That someone was Evan Carter. He had told himself it was simple gratitude, that he merely respected her work ethic, her discipline, her calm. But deep down, he knew there was more. Something about her presence made the house feel alive again. For the first time in years, he found himself leaving his office door open, just to hear the faint sound of her humming in the corridor. On Thursday morning, Evan decided to test what he had begun to believe. He entered the main dining hall early, long before the staff arrived. The white marble floor gleamed beneath the chandeliers. A half-finished glass of wine from the night before, still sat on the table. He stared at it for a moment, then with a deliberate motion, tipped it over. The deep red liquid spread across the linen like a wound. He stepped back, folded his arms, and waited. Moments later, Mia appeared, carrying a stack of fresh linens. She froze when she saw the spill. Her eyes darted toward him, still sitting in his chair, pretending to be lost in thought. She hesitated, unsure if she should speak. "I am sorry, Mr. Carter," she said softly. "I should have cleared the table sooner." Evan kept his tone neutral. "Accidents happen." "Oh." She hurried to fetch a towel. When she returned, she dropped to her knees beside the table, gently blotting the wine from the expensive fabric. He noticed the way she moved, careful, patient, never rushing even when the task was small. When the stain began to fade, she glanced up, startled to see him watching her. "I will take care of it right away," she said quickly, lowering her gaze. "You already are," he replied quietly. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the soft rhythm of the cloth against the table. Then, as she stood to carry the stained linen away, he noticed her shiver. The temperature had dropped again, and a draft swept through the hall. Without thinking, he reached for the jacket draped over his chair and handed it to her. "You should wear this," he said. "It is cold." She looked stunned. "I cannot, sir. It would be improper." "It is just a jacket, Mia," he said gently. "Not a rule to break." "Oh." Reluctantly, she took it, draping it over her shoulders. The fabric nearly swallowed her small frame. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Evan watched her walk away, the hem of his jacket brushing her knees. A strange calm settled over him. It had been years since he had given anything without expecting something in return. Yet now, a single act of warmth felt more valuable than all the deals he had ever made. That evening, the house quieted once more. Evan stood in his study, gazing at the framed photo of his mother. "You were right," he said softly. "Sincerity does exist. I just had to stop pretending long enough to see it." Across the mansion, in the staff quarters, Mia carefully folded the jacket he had lent her. Before placing it on the chair beside her bed, she slipped her small notebook beneath it, the one filled with her mother's medical notes and quiet prayers. Somehow, she felt safer that way. Outside, the first stars began to appear, glittering faintly through the fading clouds. Neither of them knew it yet, but that simple moment, a spilled glass of wine, a borrowed jacket, and an unspoken kindness would soon change everything. The next morning arrived quiet and bright. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Carter estate, painting long gold lines across the marble floor. The house smelled faintly of lemon polish and fresh coffee. Mia moved through the corridors with her usual calm, carrying a basket of laundry. She paused at the end of the hall when she heard a voice behind her. "Mia," Evan called, his tone softer than she had ever heard. She turned quickly, startled to see him standing there without a suit jacket, his sleeves rolled up. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said politely. He smiled slightly. "You do not have to call me that all the time. Evan is fine." Her eyes widened. "Sir, I could never—" He raised a hand gently. "Then keep calling me Mr. Carter if that makes you comfortable. I wanted to ask you something." She nodded nervously. "Of course. Have you ever been to the city gallery?" She shook her head. "No, sir. I have walked past it, but never inside." He hesitated, almost amused by her honesty. "Then come with me tomorrow. The foundation is hosting a private exhibition. You will not be working. You will be my guest." "Oh." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. "Your guest?" she repeated, certain she had misheard. "Yes," he said simply. "You deserve to see something beautiful that does not have to be cleaned afterward." Mia looked down at the basket in her hands. "I do not think I belong in places like that." "You do," he replied quietly. "More than most." The conversation left her shaken. For the rest of the day, she moved like someone walking through a dream. That night, she called the hospital to ask about her mother's condition. The nurse told her the balance due had been reduced. Confused, she asked why. The answer was simple. A donation had been made anonymously under her mother's name. When she hung up, tears filled her eyes. She whispered to herself, "Who would do something like that?" But her heart already knew. The following evening, Evan waited in the foyer as Mia descended the grand staircase. She wore a simple cream dress borrowed from another maid, her hair loose for the first time. Evan's breath caught. She looked nothing like a servant. She looked like light walking. "You look perfect," he said. "Perfect is too big a word for me, Mr. Carter," she replied shyly. They arrived at the city gallery just as the sun set behind the skyline. The glass building shimmered, reflecting every color of the evening. Inside, soft music played, and guests in tailored suits mingled around sculptures and paintings. Mia stayed close to Evan, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. A woman approached, smiling. "Mr. Carter, the board has been waiting for you." He nodded politely. "One moment." Then he turned to Mia. "Do not be afraid. Just look around. Let the art speak." Mia wandered through the exhibit slowly, her eyes wide. One painting stopped her in her tracks, a quiet portrait of a woman folding laundry by a window, her face tired yet peaceful. The plaque read "Grace" in ordinary hands. Behind her, Evan watched silently. He had chosen that piece for tonight's event. When Mia turned, their eyes met. She understood then that he had not brought her here as a test, but as a reflection to show her that dignity lives in every act of care, no matter how small. For the first time since she had arrived at the mansion, she smiled fully, without fear. Evan felt something inside him settle. The world outside could keep its titles and wealth. In that moment, kindness felt like the truest luxury of all. The next morning, the Carter Foundation headquarters was filled with a quiet tension. Staff hurried across the marble lobby, adjusting their name tags and whispering about a new initiative that Mr. Carter had personally designed. No one knew the full details, only that it was about integrity and opportunity. Upstairs, Evan stood by the tall glass windows of his office, watching the city below. His reflection stared back at him, confident as always, but with something new behind his eyes. He had made a decision the night before. Mia's kindness had shown him that the foundation had lost touch with its purpose. It was time to change that. When Mia arrived that morning, still unsure of her place after the gallery event, Mrs. Daniels intercepted her in the hall. "Mr. Carter wants to see you," she said curtly. Mia's hands tightened on the folder she was carrying. "Did I do something wrong?" Mrs. Daniels shrugged. "You will find out soon enough." Mia entered the office quietly. Evan was waiting by the desk, sleeves rolled, a faint smile on his face. "Good morning, Mia," he said. She nodded nervously. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." "There." He gestured toward a chair. "Please, sit. I have a proposal for you." She blinked. "For me, sir?" "Yes. The foundation is launching a new program called Honest Hands. It is designed to help people who work hard but are often overlooked: janitors, caregivers, service workers, people like you." Her eyes widened. "That is wonderful, sir. I want you to be part of it," he continued. "Not as staff, as a coordinator. You will help recruit others, design training, manage resources. You understand this world better than anyone in my office ever could." Mia froze. "Mr. Carter, I do not have the qualifications for something like that. I finished only 2 years of community college before my mother got sick. I am just—" "You are not just anything," he interrupted. His tone was calm but firm. "You are the reason I remembered what this foundation was supposed to be. That makes you more qualified than half of the executives here." She stared at him, unsure if she should believe him. "But what if I fail?" Evan smiled gently. "Then we learn together. But something tells me you will not." For a moment, the room felt lighter. The morning sun broke through the clouds, washing the office in a warm glow. Mia lowered her gaze, tears forming at the corner of her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me." He shook his head. "No, Mia. Thank you for reminding me that people are not defined by what they earn, but by what they give." She left his office that day with a new badge clipped to her uniform: Program Coordinator, Carter Foundation. The title felt unreal, almost too heavy to carry. But when she called the hospital that evening, the nurse told her that her mother's health was improving, and Mia knew she could finally breathe. Back in his office, Evan watched her file disappear down the hallway. For the first time in years, he felt proud of something that had nothing to do with profit or publicity. He did not realize it yet, but this new program, and the woman who had inspired it, would soon change more than his company. It would change him. Weeks passed, and the Honest Hands program quickly gained attention. Newspapers praised its mission to uplift ordinary workers, and the Carter Foundation became the face of compassion in the city. But with praise came envy. Inside the headquarters, not everyone welcomed the sudden rise of a former maid who now held an office next to the CEO. Whispers began in the break room. Some said Mia had charmed her way into the position. Others claimed Evan was blinded by pity, or worse, something personal. Each rumor grew sharper, and by the end of the month, the staff had split between those who respected her and those who resented her. Mia tried to ignore it. She worked longer hours, arriving before dawn and leaving after sunset. Her dedication only seemed to make the gossip louder. Mrs. Daniels, who had never liked her, watched from a distance with narrowed eyes. One afternoon, as Mia prepared for a press meeting, she overheard two executives whispering near the copier. "She was a maid 3 months ago," one said. "Now she is giving us orders?" "The boss must have a reason," the other replied with a smirk. "A personal one, I bet." Their laughter echoed down the hallway. Mia froze, clutching her folder. The words stung deeper than she expected. She forced herself to breathe, whispering, "Stay calm. Just focus." But that calm shattered the next morning when she walked into the office and found an email printed out on her desk, a tabloid draft, claiming that she was in a secret relationship with Evan Carter, implying that her promotion was the result of manipulation. The story had been leaked anonymously. Her vision blurred as she read the words. Shame burned in her chest. She could already imagine how it looked. The maid who became the millionaire's favorite. Evan entered moments later holding his coffee. "Mia, are you all right?" She looked up, her voice trembling. "Did you see this?" She handed him the paper. He read it in silence, his jaw tightening. "This is garbage," he said finally. "I will have legal take it down." But Mia shook her head. "It does not matter. People already believe it. They will never see me the same again." "Do not let them define you," he said firmly. "I cannot work here, Mr. Carter," she whispered. "Every time someone looks at me, I feel like a lie." He reached out, but she stepped back. "Please," she said quietly, "do not make this harder." That evening, she packed her few belongings into a small suitcase. Before leaving the office, she placed her ID badge and a folded note on Evan's desk. On top of it, she left the same handkerchief she had once used to wipe his forehead, the one with the initials EC. When Evan returned later and found the items, his chest went still. The note read, "Thank you for believing in me, even when I could not believe in myself. I am sorry for disappointing you." He stared at the handkerchief for a long time, the faint scent of lavender still clinging to it. Around him, the walls of his office felt emptier than they ever had before. That night, for the first time in years, the millionaire who had everything sat alone in silence, realizing that the one thing he truly wanted had just walked away. Rain poured over the city the next evening, washing the streets in silver light. Evan's car moved slowly through the quiet suburbs, his driver watching him through the mirror, waiting for direction. But Evan said nothing. He had spent the entire day rereading Mia's note, unable to focus on anything else. The words had settled deep in his chest like a stone. He had built an empire on logic, yet for the first time, his decisions were ruled by something he could not calculate. When his assistant mentioned that Mia had withdrawn her last paycheck in person, he knew where she would be. "Take me to the bus station," he said quietly. The driver hesitated. "At this hour, sir?" "Yes, now." The city blurred past the windows until the lights gave way to the worn glow of the old bus terminal. Evan stepped out into the rain without an umbrella. The ground was slick, the air cold, but he barely felt it. Near the far bench, under a flickering lamp, he saw her, the same small figure with the same faded coat, clutching a single suitcase. She looked up as he approached, her eyes wide with surprise. "Mr. Carter?" He stopped a few feet away, drenched but steady. "Why did you leave without letting me explain?" "I had to," she said softly. "People were talking. They said things that made me feel small again. I did not want to ruin your name." "You could never ruin my name," he said. "You gave it meaning." Mia looked down, tears mixing with the rain. "I only did what was right." "Exactly," he replied. "And now it is my turn." Before she could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the framed handkerchief, the one she had left behind. The initials, EC, shimmered faintly behind the glass. I was selfish, he continued, voice breaking. I thought testing people would protect me from disappointment, but you proved that kindness never needs a test. I kept this because it reminded me of who I want to be. He knelt down on the wet pavement, ignoring the startled glances of passers-by. With one hand, he gently wiped the mud from her shoes, just as she once wiped the dust from his table. I do not deserve your respect, he said, but I want to earn it anyway. Mr. Carter, please stand up, she whispered, horrified. People are looking. Let them look, he said softly. For once, I want the world to see what real honor looks like. For a long moment, neither moved. The rain fell harder, the sound echoing through the station. Then, slowly, Mia knelt too, helping him to his feet. Her hands were shaking. You did not have to come, she said. Yes, I did, he replied, because I let fear drive away the only person who ever showed me truth without expecting anything back. She looked up at him, her voice trembling. What are you asking me to do? Come back, he said. Not as an employee, as my partner in the foundation, and, if time allows, maybe in life. The silence between them was broken only by the rumble of an approaching bus. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. You really are terrible at pretending, Mr. Carter. Oh? He laughed quietly through the rain. Then maybe it is time I stop pretending altogether. And for the first time since they met, Mia reached for his hand, not out of duty, but choice. 1 year later, the grand hall of the Carter Foundation glowed with warm light. Rows of white chairs faced a small stage draped in soft gold fabric. The air buzzed with quiet excitement as guests took their seats for the first anniversary celebration of the Honest Hands program. Photographers whispered to each other, waiting for the moment the doors would open. At the back of the room, Mia stood beside the new foundation banner, her name printed beneath Evans as co-director. She still wore simple clothes, a modest navy dress, with her hair pulled back. But her presence carried a calm confidence that made her seem radiant. The journey from maid to leader had been long, but she had walked it with grace. Across the room, Evan adjusted his tie, glancing toward her with a faint smile. He looked different now, still powerful, still commanding but lighter, as if he had finally set down a weight he had carried for too many years. When he stepped up to the microphone, the chatter faded. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. 1 year ago, I believed success was measured by numbers and property. Then I met someone who showed me that real wealth is measured by character. The Honest Hands program is not mine alone. It was inspired by a woman who taught me that integrity is not something you buy or inherit. It is something you live. He turned to Mia. Mia, will you join me on stage? A murmur swept through the crowd as she walked forward, her steps steady. When she reached him, Evan handed her a framed piece of cloth. Behind the glass was the same handkerchief that had connected them from the very beginning. I kept this as a reminder of the moment I stopped testing people and started trusting them, he said. Today, I want it to belong to the foundation as a symbol of what honesty and compassion can build. The audience applauded softly. Mia's eyes shimmered as she spoke into the microphone. When I first came here, I only wanted to earn enough to take care of my mother. I never imagined I would find a purpose or a family. This place taught me that kindness is not weakness, and that no act of care is ever wasted. Evan looked at her, his voice low but clear. And it taught me that love, like leadership, is not about power, it is about courage. He turned to the audience once more, which is why I am taking another step tonight. He reached into his pocket and drew out a small velvet box. A collective gasp moved through the crowd. Mia froze, her breath caught in her throat. Evan smiled gently. Mia, you walked into my life with nothing but sincerity, and you changed everything I believed about worth. Will you walk beside me, not as my employee, but as my wife? The room fell silent for a heartbeat before filling with applause and laughter. Tears slipped down Mia's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Evan placed the ring on her finger, and the audience rose to their feet. Cameras flashed, but in that moment, neither of them saw the lights or the crowd. They saw only each other, the maid who taught a millionaire to feel, and the man who finally understood that love is the truest form of wealth. As the applause swelled, Evan leaned close and said softly, You never needed to be tested, Mia. You were the answer all along. And under the golden lights of the foundation they built together, their story born from a simple act of kindness came full circle.